Welcome to ADK Talks, the podcast from ADK Taste, a curated guide to the best places, people, food, and experiences in the Adirondacks. I'm Steve, and I'm joined by my co-host and sister, Jane. Say hi, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Very good. In each episode, we explore the stories, history, culture, and characters that make this region one of the most fascinating places in the country. Today we're talking about something every Adirondack visitor, camp owner, and year-round resident has in common: food. But not just recipes. We're talking about the flavors, traditions, and memories that help define life in the Adirondacks.
Our guest is Susi Gott Séguret, author of the new cookbook, Adirondack Appetite, 150 Recipes for Cabin, Camp, and Beyond. The book combines recipes with stories, history, and reflections on what makes Adirondack cooking unique. Susi is a chef, a certified culinary professional, a forager, a wine expert, and an author whose work explores the deep connection between food and place. Today we'll talk about how she came to write this book, what Adirondack cuisine means to her, and a few dishes that might inspire your next camp dinner. Whether you're an accomplished cook or someone whose specialty is opening a cooler at the lake, there's something in this episode for you.
So grab a fork and let's dig in.
Susi, welcome to ADK Talks.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
If someone said to you, I know what Southern food is, and I know what New England food is, or California cuisine, what is Adirondack food? How would you answer that?
That is the perfect question of the day, Jane. So I will jump right in as invited to do so. Adirondack food is a combination of ingredients that are hearty, easily transportable, and prepared to satisfy the appetites of hikers, campers, boaters, bikers, skiers, as well as those who prefer to sit back on the beach or the porch of a cabin tucked in the balsams.
You know, the Adirondacks kind of sit at a crossroads of Indigenous, French-Canadian, logging camp, sporting camp, and great camp influences. How do these traditions show up on the table today?
So I would build a plate around some kind of a hearty meat or wild game, a handful of fresh mushrooms gathered in the nearby woods, some greenery from a local farm, roasted corn on the cob if it's summertime, or acorn or butternut squash if it's autumn. Dessert might be a hot crumble with fresh berries if early in the season, or it might be spiced apples in autumn or winter. Breakfast would, of course, include locally smoked bacon and locally harvested maple syrup, which is plentiful in the Adirondacks.
You're making me hungry. Has Adirondack food evolved over time?
Adirondack food, yes, has evolved over time. As today's average individual is less likely to have hunting and trapping skills and more likely to be looking for a healthy plant-based diet, the abundance of bear and beaver dishes has often been replaced with easier to find chicken and fish dishes, augmented by vegetables from a growing number of fine family-operated farms, which are becoming more and more plentiful. Thank goodness, as time goes by. In addition to this evolution, of course, the rise of televised cooking and travel shows has expanded the reader's awareness of what is possible, both in theory and in practice.
That's great. I remember going to the Adirondack Experience. This is, I don't even know how long ago it was, maybe 10 or 15 years. And they had an exhibit about food in the Adirondacks. And I remember in particular, they went through what at a logging camp, what they, the average logging camp of, however many men, the incredible amount of food. There was like breakfast and second breakfast, and then there was lunch, and then there was second lunch, and then dinner. And the number of pancakes and biscuits and bread and pounds of different kinds of meat was really, really stunning. And are there ingredients or styles of cooking or traditions that you feel are uniquely Adirondack, or is it really just this kind of amalgam, as we've talked about all these different traditions?
Well, obviously the camps, as in home camps or even the great camps and cabins, if they are live-in, sleep-in cabins, provide a wider range of cooking options than the open fire. So we have a combination here. We have a combination of outdoor recipes that are meant to be prepared in the outdoors, meaning focusing on easily transportable ingredients. And then for those people who might be staying at camp rather than out on the trail, and feeding those hungry hikers when they get back from the trail or from the ski slopes or from the lake or the rivers, to satisfy their appetite. We have a lot more options for recipes that we might be able to explore, including some of the recipes from the Great Camp. And as you were mentioning the Adirondack Experience, which was, of course, as I was growing up, the Adirondack Museum, and a lot of people still know it by that name, I was thinking how much the plentitude of food parallels life in France. I spent 20 years living in France, and the amount of food consumed in one day, it's almost constant. It's like when people come to visit, you set out the appetizers and you might have 5 or 10 different appetizers, and then you'll move into a multi-course wine-paired meal. And that meal can last for 4 hours. And then if your guests came for lunch, you might move, maybe take a 5 or 10 minute walk around the street and sit down for another 4 or 5 hour meal. So in a way that echoes the loggers' needs of filling their stomachs, except that the quantities are not quite as enormous, of course. But I really have been intrigued in putting this book together, in trying to blend and bring together the influences of the outdoors and the influences of the more modern French-inspired cooking that was, of course, treated in the great camps.
Just to kind of, no pun intended, set the table a little bit for our listeners, for people that are maybe meeting you for the first time, and I don't want to get too Barbara Walters on you, but who is Susi Gott Séguret?
That's about the hardest question that you could possibly ask.
Because you've worn a lot of hats. I mean, chef, forager, writer, educator, wine expert. Which came first?
So yes. Which came first? Actually, I grew up as a fiddle player, songwriter, singer, dancer, and I made my living playing music for the majority of the first 2/3 of my life. And then I ended up moving to France, following the musical trail, but of course being captured by the culinary trail. And I spent 20 years there, raised 3 children. And when I came back to Appalachia, where I was raised, I figured I had spent so much time sharing Appalachian music with Europe that it was time to bring a little something of Europe back here. And that's when the culinary exploration began, and I haven't looked back.
Was food always part of your story?
I would say from the very moment that I first toddled out to my parents' garden and looked at what was at the base of their hoe and picked up a radish and wiped off the crumbles of dirt and tasted it and then felt that burn and went running down to the spring, which flowed out from under a moonshine still, by the way, I was captivated.
That's amazing. Your book, Adirondack Appetite, how would you describe it in a nutshell to someone?
In a nutshell, it is a collection of recipes that are designed for hungry people. So hungry people, be they out on the trail or be they back at camp. And it's really a marriage of the wild, the savage, and the sophisticated.
And what do you hope readers experience beyond just getting some great new recipes and ideas?
Well, I really hope they come away with the invitation to be audacious, that anything really goes. If you're cooking for people you love, and essentially that is why beyond hunger, which in our day and age, in our time, in the Adirondacks, most of us are lucky enough not to be driven by starvation. Unfortunately, that's not the place in a lot of other places in the world at the moment, but we are fortunate to have the option of cooking what we want to eat most of the time. So really cooking is about love. And we eat to absorb the love of the people who have cooked for us. When we cook, it's a gift of love to those who are sitting at our table. So in a way, anything goes, be it Adirondack inspired, be it French inspired, be it foraging inspired, be it whatever your background might be. It might be Italian, it might be Greek, it might be Iranian, whatever, it might be Korean. who knows, wherever you come from, whatever traditions you bring to the table are every bit worthy to be recreated in the Adirondacks and to become Adirondack recipes.
I think that's a really interesting point. We had the folks from New Vita Preserve in Jay, New York on the podcast earlier this year, and they talked about bringing different flavors to the Adirondacks. And, as someone who's only been living up here full time and coming from New York City, like Thai food and sushi and Lebanese food is just not as common here. But the traditions around some of those food, especially I'm thinking of Indian food and spicy foods and foods that have a lot of flavor, but use some of the same ingredients, meat, potatoes, fresh vegetables. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for people in the Adirondacks to create things, eat local, but think global in the kinds of recipes that they're preparing. Why did you decide to write this book now?
I have been fortunate to have a couple of titles come out previously, thanks to my publisher who's located in the Catskills. This is Hatherley Press. So I started out, actually, my first cookbook was Appalachian Appetite, since I grew up in Appalachia. But I spent my summers in the Adirondacks because my father's great-grandfather and some friends of his built a camp there in the late 1800s, just 10 years before the lake was raised. That's when the camp began. So it's been in the family for generations, and I always wanted to do a parallel to Appalachian Appetite and write a book called Adirondack Appetite, again, to explore the traditions, some of the music from the area, the local ingredients, the foraged ingredients that we have at our fingertips, and to explore how one can weave together the Indian traditions, the French traditions, and then the traditions of all those who have visited the Adirondacks since.
Was there a moment when you realized that there was an Adirondack food story, or have you always felt like there was a story that needed to be told?
I think with every single dish that you eat, there's a story to be told. And wherever you are, it's likely to be inspired by the location where you first taste that dish. It's like Proust and his Madeleine. I don't know if you ever read Marcel Proust, but he talks about the Madeleine and all the memories that evokes. And it's the same with our travel anywhere. Whatever food we eat in that country will bring that country up. And the more we explore cuisine in the Adirondacks and the more we expand that, I think the more people will feel attached to the Adirondacks in ways that they weren't maybe previously if they didn't have the capacity to go out and hunt a beaver or come up with some bear grease to fry up their taters in, taters being what we call potatoes in Appalachia. And so I was pondering this a little bit too, because Appalachian cuisine has, and I say Appalachia because I'm from the South, if you were from the North, you might say Appalachia. And if you came down here, we would throw an Appalachia to show you which way it should be pronounced.
That's
by
like
golly.
pecan and pecan. Yeah.
Right. But anyway, Appalachian cuisine is finally getting its due. And I think that Adirondack cuisine could be one of the next recognized styles. And certainly we have more and more restaurants opening, more and more chefs who are attracted to the Adirondacks as we have more and more small family farms that are being tended because, traditionally in the Adirondacks, it's a harsh climate. As you know, you live there. Traditionally in the Adirondacks, the growing season is short, and that is a challenge, which is why meat has tended to be more prominent on the plate, perhaps, than vegetables. But now with modern growing techniques and modern refrigeration, and the possibility of shipping things in from farther away too, and the ease with which we can travel as opposed to the horse and buggy days and the days of really, really muddy roads, it opens up a lot more possibilities.
Did you have to do a lot of research for this book?
I did spend time in the Adirondack Museum, thanks to Jenny Ambrose, who oversees the archives. And I poured through a lot of traditional Adirondack recipes and decided that probably your average person was not going to go out and kill a beaver, as I said, or catch a hare.
Have you ever had beaver? I'm just curious.
Beaver, no. Groundhog, yes.
No way.
Possum, yes. Bear meat, yes. Venison, of course. Squirrel, yes. But beaver, not yet. That's on my list.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that crops up because it's, it's one of those culinary intriguing items. But in any case, I figured that I should probably concentrate on ingredients that were readily available to most people. And part of the purpose for putting together a book like this, it's to reach a threefold audience. One is the audience that does not yet know the Adirondacks, that wants to discover the Adirondacks, that is just experimenting perhaps with the combination of flavors and ideas and the outdoor hunger. One is, of course, for catering to the people who come back year after year, the seasoned campers who already are familiar with the area, but who might be looking for fresh inspiration to feed their families or just to feed themselves when they're out in the woods. And then one, of course, is to give a little bit of fresh inspiration to people who live there year round, who have been through the freezing up and the thawing of the ice and the mud season and the black flies and mosquitoes, and know the long winter nights and are looking for something to make it through the cold spell. So all of that combined with the fun and games and the idea of celebration that we have when we are in the Adirondacks or anywhere at home, maybe trying to recreate a feeling that we had when we were in the Adirondacks in the summertime. So one of my favorite sections of the book, which I managed to slip in very craftily, is a fun and games section, for which I consulted with a lot of fellow campers to see what their favorite fun and games are when they're up there. So particularly one which is a corn eating contest, whereby you boil a huge pot of corn, maybe 10 or 20 ears per person. And then everybody eats as many ears as they can. And then you line up all the ears on the porch and everybody lies down next to his row of ear or her row of ears. And whoever reaches from toe to head wins the contest.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's advantageous to be short, except then you might not be able to ingest quite as many ears of corn.
I think that, who is it, Joey Chestnut, who always wins the Nathan's hot dog eating contest?
Yeah.
He's not a big guy. So that's really interesting. Did you go in with certain assumptions or certain ideas that once you kind of got in there and were doing more research, maybe discovering some new things, was there anything that changed your mind or made you think a little bit differently about Adirondack cuisine?
I did go in with transportable and camping recipes, first and foremost, on the mind. And as time evolved, I did fall back on a lot more campfire, cabin recipes that you can prepare when you come back to the cabin late at night or on a rainy day or on a cold day or at home, again, when you're feeding that hungry family that has been out camping, because that's half of it. Half of it is being out and half of it is feeding the hunger when you come back home and having a chance to relax. And I think it's a combination of the active recipes and the passive recipes that builds a balance here.
We talked a lot about food and memory. Is there a particular dish for you that evokes memories of the Adirondacks or make you think about the Adirondacks in your time here?
Oh, there's so many dishes. In a way, it's like asking, what is your favorite child? Every recipe has
in our family,
place.
It's me. My mother and father would say me, but
Here are a couple of quotes from other people that I think might be relevant here. Ivy Brashner says, food isn't just about sustenance in the physiological sense. It's about soul sustenance. In passing on our traditions, we're creating a lineage that can be passed from soul to soul, keeping generations forever alive. And then Hervé Tisse, who's the father of molecular gastronomy, says, it's not the food that we are hungry for. We're hungry for the love of the person who's cooking. So I might extend that also to say that we're hungry for the feeling of the place where we first tasted a certain dish or ingredient. And each meal we ingest feeds our essential memory.
During your research, did you uncover any forgotten traditions, whether it be a food that you had forgotten about or just in general a forgotten recipe that you thought deserves a little bit more attention?
There's one recipe that I uncovered actually in the Adirondack experience archives, and that is a mountain ash cocktail, which is included in the appetizer recipes, possibly in the fun and games section. I don't remember where I put it, to be honest. But that, and I did a little bit of research on various different cocktails that there's the Algonquin, which actually is a historically prepared cocktail, and there is a quoits club, quoits being one of the games that we play in our camp. If you're not familiar with quoits, they're round discs of metal that are similar to horseshoes, but a little heavier. And so there's actually a quoits club that developed a cocktail, and so I have a special cocktail for that. And then I have my favorite new cocktail personally is a Sazerac, which comes from New Orleans, but I call it a Suzerac because I use Suze, which is a gentian bitter, and that being one of my nicknames, it comes out as something that is particularly pleasing when you have guests come in to visit.
How can our listeners learn more about you? I know you have a great website. And where can they find the book?
Yes, my website is quintessentialtable.com. I know that's a mouthful. Quintessentialtable.com, and that does detail culinary, literary, and musical explorations. And books can be found anywhere books are sold. So from your local bookstore, which of course we prefer to frequent, to Barnes and Noble, of course, Penguin Random House, which is the distributor, and, you know, the smorgasbord of Amazon, Target, Walmart, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, support your local bookstore if at all possible. And if you are in the Adirondacks and you want to visit the Old Forge hardware store or the Adirondack Experience or the Wild Center or Charlie John's in Speculator or Hoss's in Long Lake or any of those places, then yeah, choose your favorite place and request it. Make sure they supply you.
Is there one recipe in the book that you feel like just perfectly captures or sums up Adirondack cuisine?
Again, it's that
Sophie's
conundrum
choice.
of choosing between your children, but giving a little bit of recognition to the loggers, who certainly were a huge part of the Adirondack mystique. There are a couple of recipes that I chose to honor them. So one being sawdust pie, which is a recipe that actually is built on 7 egg whites and some graham crackers and some chopped nuts and some coconut. And it's all put together in a way that will keep loggers from becoming too hungry. And then there's sawmill gravy, which is something that we serve in the South, but also is served in the North and was served in the logging camps. And that's gravy with bits of sausage floating in it, which goes great with Southern biscuits, which may not be a Northern habit, but they could well become one.
I see a lot of biscuits and gravy on the menu up here on different menus. So that's great. From the basic great diners like Pitkin's in Scroon Lake or Noonmark Diner to more elevated styles of biscuits and gravy. So we know about that up in the North. You know, what recipe maybe would you recommend to somebody who says, I'm not much of a cook?
If you're not much of a cook, you can go with the classic PBJ, right? You know, I don't know anybody who can't make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so you can riff on it by choosing a different bread, by choosing a different jelly, by getting local jams, supporting your farmer's market, by getting a different kind of a nut butter. You can toast the bread or leave it untoasted. You can cut it in triangles. You can cut it in squares. You can cut it with a cookie cutter if you want. You can do all kinds of things with a classic peanut butter jelly sandwich. So this is for either children or people who just like peanut butter and jelly.
I like
or
a good
people who don't cook at
PB&J
all.
still. Yeah.
And then if we're moving on from that kind of obvious simplicity, there is one recipe that I have particularly enjoyed preparing since I came aware of its existence. And this was inspired by Jacques Pepin, who you may have known from early culinary shows along with Julia Child. He is great at simplifying complicated recipes. And one of his recipes is cassoulet, which is a dish that's prepared in the southwest of France. It usually takes several days, and there's lots of layers of flavor and goose fat and all kinds of things you throw in and special sausages. But if you don't have the time or the capacity for that, you can do that recipe in camp using hot dogs or whatever kind of leftover sausage you might have. And you can get tomatoes out of a can. You could get beans out of a can that are already cooked. You can throw it together, fry up an onion, throw on a few stale cracker crumbs or whatever, stick it in the oven, and you have something in under a half an hour that's absolutely delicious and that will feed your hunger.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I have a good friend who we had an annual tradition in February of having a cassoulet dinner, which is the perfect time of year, I think, to eat that dish. But he would take several days to make it, but it's wonderful. Okay, if Steve and I were coming to your house for dinner in July, what would you make for us?
Are you talking about my house up in the Adirondacks?
Yeah, our house in the Adirondacks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I would probably start you out with of course, a suzerac, because we mentioned that, or one of the other libations for which we can now get ice from Stewart's, which is one of our local convenience stores, rather than going to the ice house and getting out a chunk and beating it up with a hammer. So that's one of the ways in which Adirondack entertaining has evolved. So then I would accompany that with a slab of cream cheese enrobed in roasted sesame seeds and drowned in soy sauce and some crackers. That's the recipe of one of our neighboring camper friends. And I'd probably follow that with some kind of a lake bass that was cooked en papillote, wrapped up in some paper in the oven with some vegetables and lemon. And that would be surrounded by some freshly harvested chanterelles and black trumpets if we were in good fortune to be in the right season. And we would finish that off perhaps with some maple walnut ice cream from Stewart's, because that's our local convenience store, which is covered with maple syrup from our nearby provider, whoever that might be. For me, that's Bill and Kathleen Herrick in Indian Lake. And you support your own local sources and make it your own. That's the name of the game. It's innovation and supporting the local sources wherever possible.
Yeah. One thing that has been great about doing the adktaste.com website and this podcast is I've discovered so many more makers and producers up here than I knew. I mean, I've always known about Nettle Meadow in Lake Luzerne, which they do amazing goat cheeses, but we've come to know Sugar Hill Creamery or Sugar House Creamery. And we live 10 miles from Oscar's and have always loved their products, but now are being introduced to, grass-fed beef and other producers. So, you're right. It's a hard living and short growing season up here, but that doesn't mean we can't produce really great stuff. And we actually have some episodes coming up with some local farmers. So I'm really excited about that.
Riffing on the local creameries, I've amused myself with creating a cheese board on a paddle.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Or an oar if you happen to be out on the boat. So charcuterie, yes, or whatever local cheeses you might have gathered at Oscar's or at, what is the other store in
Meat
Lawrenceburg?
Store of the North.
Yes,
Jack
the
Tony's.
Meat Store of the North. I love that place. Or wherever you happen to be. That's, you can lay an Adirondack jacket out on top of your paddle if you want to, and put your cheeses and meats on it. And what better portable food can you possibly get?
100%. I love that. You mentioned that the house that your family has been going to is built in the 1880s. I'm just curious, what are the cooking conditions like? Is it pretty modern or pretty rustic? And if so, how do you account for that?
Well, the original cabin of our family, Idleside, was equipped, of course, with a wood stove, and they also brought a cook up with them. So the campers were able to go out and do their thing, maybe collect a few blueberries for the cook to use, but the cook actually turned things into the meals. These days, most people are not so lucky to bring a personal cook along. So it has evolved over time, but there is still the wood stove, and there is a gas stove as well, and then there's, of course, the fire pit out back, and there's a fire ring down on the beach. The subsequent camp that my father actually built out of logs a little bit further up the hill, has the cook stove that belonged to my great-grandmother, and that has a double oven. It's a wood cook stove with a double oven and a massive surface, which is wonderful for entertaining. And I just wanted to throw in here, because I think I didn't mention this yet, that it's been fun putting together this book with a variety of different chapters. So starting out with, of course, breakfast, because breakfast is the way we start every day in a hungry camp before going out on the trail, which I called Serious Starts. And we continue with outdoors and on the trail recipes. And then there are the back at the cabin recipes. There are savory sides. There are cocktail hour recipes, sweet treats, and of course, the fun and games chapter. And equally important with the recipes is a slice of Adirondack history and geography, including a nod to, of course, the Indian nations, to the French influence, logging camps, great camps, and ending up with Adirondack mushroom savvy, contributed by our own Adirondack resident, Andy LeBlanc, and some Adirondack fern savvy contributed by Ted Watt, a spectacular map of the main landmarks contributed by Susan Haddon, and a selection of Adirondack artists past and present, including the disciples of the Hudson River School, and of course a listing of the great camps, the Adirondack High Peaks, a selection of Adirondack restaurants and resources, and one of my favorite sections, along with the fun and games, is a selection of camp songs, because music and food are inseparable in any gathering of consequence.
That's amazing. It's such an amazing amalgamation of so many things that you managed to pack into the book. And that songs piece that really resonates with me. Stephen and I both went to summer camp near Lowville, New York, just on the western edge of the Adirondacks. And I can still remember the songs we sang at camp. We always started every meal singing, not necessarily a grace, but giving thanks for what we were about to receive. And I can still remember all of those songs. So that's awesome. What we'd like to do, we sometimes do this with our guests, and I think you'd be perfect for it. We do a little rapid fire. So these are short questions and just your short answer. Are you game for that?
I'm game.
All right, let's go. Favorite Adirondack season?
Autumn.
Favorite camp breakfast?
Huckleberries picked straight off the bush and popped straight into the mouth.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
100% I'm with you on that. Campfire or dining room?
Each has its place. I love them both.
Sweet or savory?
Savory.
One Adirondack ingredient everyone should try, and please don't say beaver.
Black trumpet mushrooms.
Perfect Adirondack day.
Oh, they're all perfect.
Oh, that's right. I love that. You know, we talked a little bit about foraging. What advice would you give to somebody who, you know, wants to go out and find mushrooms and not get poisoned by them, I would say.
Yeah, know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yes, well, the Adirondack mushroom primer that is included in the back of the book here, thanks to Andy LeBlanc, again, is a perfect place to start. There are quite a lot of mushrooms described and detailed with a few recipes thrown in. And if you don't have the good fortune of knowing someone who has already been out mushroom hunting, because the best teacher, of course, has 2 feet and can lead you in the field, then there are plenty of reference books online. There are reference books of Adirondack mushrooms that you can pick up. Just be cautious because, of course, there are lookalikes, and you want to make sure you research the lookalikes and make sure that you are certain of what you're tasting, and start out small. Take a small taste. If it's super, super bitter, chances are it might be poisonous, because bitterness is there to keep you from eating poisonous ingredients. So start small with a tiny bite. If it tastes excellent, chances are it's probably excellent to eat.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
If you're me, you take your sister with you and have her try the first bite.
Should we tell the story how Stephen fed me a nickel when I was 2?
I did not.
Yeah, that's not what Mom says. This isn't about us, though. With the confluence of all these different types of cooking and foods, you know, whether it's a great camp or a logging camp or a campfire or an A-frame in the mountains, can we balance those things? You know, I've been to Great Camp Sagamore many, many times, and they had very lavish meals there, but they were also served in a log dining room overlooking the lake. Is there a way to balance that rustic and also fine dining?
I did want to zero in on that elegant rusticity, and also about the philosophy of creating dishes that speak to people. The emphasis here being on easy to entertain, delicious to devour, proud to present dishes that can fit in any circumstance, a hearty slice of what one might bring to the table on any given day in the Adirondacks, where, as Cousin Joe Roberts says, it's hungry here. I also wanted to elaborate a little bit on the Adirondack culture, food being culture, and culture always being definable by the food prepared during its time. So here I'll pause to read a passage from one of my previous books, a chef's book of favorite culinary quotations. In today's uncertain world, there is one thing we can still count on. We all eat. In fact, I would make the case that we spend nearly every moment of our lives wrapped up in some aspect of the pursuit of nourishment. Food is one of the indisputable necessities of our existence, along with air, water, and, to add an intangible, love. We devote our youth to educating ourselves so that we might find a job which will permit us to buy food to feed ourselves and our family. We devote most of our waking hours, on top of earning a living so we can buy food, to shopping, cooking, serving, eating, and cleaning up afterwards. In short, we might say, along with the culinary icon MFK Fisher, first we eat, then we do everything else.
I love that. That's great. Susie, thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing all this great knowledge. Before we release you into the wild, we end every episode asking our guest to share one of their favorite places. And I know everybody has more than one. And it can be anything, a hike or a paddle, a scenic overlook, a favorite restaurant or a store, museum, or historic site, really anything that maybe you come back to time after time, or you can't wait to get back to, or you tell friends you must go to XYZ. Will you share with us one of your favorite spots?
Well, certainly my favorite spot in the whole wide world, I would say, is the tip of Coleman's Rock overlooking Indian Lake on the wild side, in that camp that my great-grandfather and R.C. Coleman, who was his friend from the time, created, along with a couple other folks. And this promontory is high, and it is one that the children love to jump off to the consternation of their parents. And it's a little bit wild, and you can feel like you're tottering on the edge of the world. And there are usually loons careening around below, and the sunlight is usually shining through the red pine needles, and the smell of whatever is cooking on the neighbors' campfires is wafting up the lake. And life just doesn't get better than that.
I love that. Thank you so much. You've painted such a beautiful picture. Thank you again, Susie. We look forward to seeing your book everywhere in the Adirondacks. And I hope again, would you repeat your URL for our listeners?
Yes, it's quintessentialtable.com. And thank you, Jane. Thank you, Steve. Thank you to Hatherley Press for bringing this book to life. And thanks to all those who have made the Adirondacks what they are.
All right.
Awesome.
Take care, Susie.
Thank you.
Well, that was a lot of fun, and I hope it inspired you, Steve, to make some new and different things for us, since you're our family chef.
Yeah, I'm really kind of looking forward to trying a couple new things. I'm not sure we're going to go foraging for mushrooms, though.
And I'm not eating beaver.
But it's certainly it's a great introduction to the food that
the traditions,
Yeah, and the traditions. That's the thing that's really important for people to grasp and take home with them. It's cool. It's great. Someone's done this.
Yeah. Listener, we'll put links to Susie's book and website in the show notes on our website, adktaste.com, and also in the show notes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And as we always say, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe, leave us a rating and a review, and share the episode with a friend. It just helps more people discover all the wonderful things there are in the Adirondacks.
You can also visit adktaste.com for travel inspiration, restaurant recommendations, event coverage, and more conversations about the people and places that make the Adirondacks special. Be sure to sign up for our free newsletter while you're there, and send us your questions and comments for future mailbag episodes. You can email us at info@adktaste.com. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time. Take care, listener. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.